Well, joining me now in Sydney is Ahmed Maqlad. He's an opposition politician living in exile in Australia. In Washington, D.C. is Muhammad Abu Bakr. He's the president of the human rights advocacy group, the Amal Project. Gentlemen, good to have you on the program. Ahmed Maqlad, let me start with you. Terrible things are happening on the streets right now. More than 100 people have been killed, many bodies chucked into the Nile, hundreds injured, paramilitaries. There's evidence that they've been raping tens of people or dozens of people. Is this something that the army is endorsing and supporting, or is it just a situation where they're unable to keep the paramilitaries under control?
Well, thank you for having me. The army, you got to talk about two sides of the army. The leaders that are chosen by the Omar al Bashir, the previous president, the ex-president, or the rest of the army. What we have seen in the streets, that the army, the real people in the army that we know, they've been crying with us. They had no options to react. The leaders now in the military council are actually making one team with the what so-called Hemeti forces, which is known to the international community, which is known to the International Criminal Court, which is known to the American government, that it's an outlaw militias, nothing more, nothing less. The leaders now decided to make a coup out of this protest, and actually they did that, and they're just committing all these horrible things on the name of protecting the country, and it's not. They're not two separate things. They hijacked the military rule in a way.
Right. Okay. So Muhammad Abu Bakr, if they have hijacked the military rule and they are making these decisions, if we consider the deep state or the former Bashir allies who are deliberately trying to set the place ablaze and undermine the protests, what's their end goal? What do they want to happen?
I agree that what happened in Sudan by the military council, which is to be separated from the army as a whole. It's a transitional military council that includes non-army forces, that includes the RSF or the Janjaweed militia. And it was the crackdown was a premeditated crime. There is no way around that. They shut down Al Jazeera the night before. They cut down the internet. They were intent on committing a massacre, and they did. What they would like to see the deep state and the former regime of al-Bashir is protection from persecution for the crimes committed in the last 30 years. And they will do whatever in their power to make sure that a civilian majority government is not reached between the TMC and the opposition parties. And they will set they're setting the streets ablaze through Hemeti and his forces is no more than a desperate attempt to prevent the inevitable, which is a complete transition of power to a civilian rule,
right,
and a complete persecution of all criminals.
But you say
of
that,
the former
Muhammad,
regime,
allow me to come in
all
here,
the talking heads.
and I'm sorry to interrupt you. You say they're trying to prevent the inevitable, but is it really the inevitable? Because if we consider that it's highly likely that Hemeti has the support of the Egyptians, of the Saudis, of the Emiratis, he's got a lot of confidence that he might be able to succeed here and that Sudan might not reach the democratic freedom that you hope for. So it might not be inevitable. Have you thought of that?
Absolutely have been, and have been keeping a close eye on the development around Sudan long before December. The trouble for the TMC, the Rapid Response Force, the NCP, and Saudi Arabia and Egypt is that this uprising has been too principled to fight the way they know how to fight. For example, both sides of the Islamist movement has been rejected by the protesters very openly. And a call is for a civilian government that is not religious, that is not military influenced. And that makes it impossible to prosecute opposition on the basis of fighting terrorism, for example, like Sisi did in Egypt. And at the same time, they rejected violence as an option completely and categorically, and that makes it impossible to take an Assad approach to cracking down on the opposition.
Right. Okay.
And that is, again, very hard to deal with for the TMC. They know how to deal with violent protesters. They don't know how to deal with civil disobedience.
Okay.
That is way too hard to fight. And as far as Saudi and Emirates, their interest is simple. They want supply for their war in Yemen. A supply of child soldiers from this militia is all they want. And at some point, there will come a point when defending Hemeti and its regime will become way too costly, more costly than fighting their own war in Yemen, and they will have to cease and desist. And this is the inevitable I'm talking about. Sooner or later, the Transitional Military Council will find itself in a losing war where staying in power is absolutely more costly than resigning. And
Okay.
that is inevitable for me.
Okay, happy to inform you that we're joined now by Rabie Abdul Atti Obeid, who was with the former government, the deposed government of Omar al Bashir. He joins us now in the discussion. Good to have you back on the program. Sir, you would have heard what Mohammed had to say. He believes that we're not going to see an Egypt outcome, we're not going to see a Syria outcome, and that the TMC is desperate in trying to crack down on those protesters now, and it's not going to work. Do you agree?
Yes, now I'm not speaking on behalf of National Congress Party. As I told you before, that National Congress Party has no existence now. Now, I'm speaking as a journalist and as also a former Director General of Sudan News Agency. I think now the situation in Sudan is going towards a civilian government, and we hope that within the coming few days, a prime minister to be actually appointed by the Transitional Military Council. And I think that also the civil disobedience will not succeed for the coming days, because there is actually now a sign of a successful the work of all people that working in the private sector and in the public sector, and all the services now are working properly, especially water supply, electricity, and also all institutions that belonging to the government that working properly. And I don't think that the civil disobedience will have any successful degree in the coming few days.
Ahmed Maglad, civil disobedience is not working, it's not going to work, and the general strike won't force the hand of the military. That's the opinion of Rabie Abdul Atti Obeid. What do you think, Ahmed?
If it's not working, why are they cutting the internet? Why are they giving him internet in his office and cutting it from the rest of Sudan? He's part of this rule, whatever his name, whatever his position. But anyways, if it is not successful, why are they cutting the internet? Why? What they do hide from the world? What are they hiding from the world? The killing? Or what they're going to kill more? Or what they're going to do more in Sudan? Well, let him answer that question if he can. Well, it's obviously those who are with the protest or those who are not or against the protest, they all agree that it is one of the most successful disobediences in the world. This is a great, agreement between the Sudanese people. It's never happened before, and it is more than successful. He just, trying to say the same words that he's used, he memorized since he was working with al-Bashir, and he will continue doing that. But anyways, just let him answer one question. If it is not successful, why your leader, Hemeti himself, was asking for us to stop?
Okay.
Why
okay, so let's get him to answer the question. Okay, fair enough. Rabie?
Yes, actually, I am not now pro with the Hemeti or with the Transitional Military Council, but now I am trying to describe the situation, the political scene in front of my eyes. Now, all services are working, and electricity supply, there is no interruption. There is no interruption in water supply. There is no, and also the majority of governmental institutions are working as normal. That is why I think that this civil disobedience will not succeed. This is according to me and according to evaluation, what is in front of my eyes. Once again, I can stress upon that. I am not pro with the transitional military council, but actually the people during the past 2 days, they felt a lot of harm due to the roadblocks. And as we know that the majority of Sudanese people, especially in the capital Khartoum, they are depending on their small business. And this small business actually affected negatively during the past 2 days due to the roadblocks that actually adopted by the Freedom and Change movement.
Mohammed Abu Bakr, I know you want to come in.
Yeah, I mean, old habits die hard, it seems, despite not having an official title with the government. Mr. Abdul Atti seems to not have changed any of his old ways of coming on camera to give alternative facts. It's not really surprising at all. Electricity and water were never a target of the civil disobedience. Nobody ever had any plans of interrupting these services or interrupting any service that is vital to or important to the average citizen of Sudan. That was never the point, and it's still not the point. On the other hand, he claims that life is normal. Life is not normal by any measures. The life in Sudan is stopped as usual. The airport right now is operating with a staff that has been imported from Egypt. Banks are closed, most of them, except Bank Umdurman and a few other branches that are still operational. And the streets are still empty. As of half an hour ago, I was streaming a live video via satellite from fellow activists in Sudan who were showing me the most dense areas of Khartoum that are usually the most dense areas of Khartoum, and they are empty as it can get. And the claim of Mr. Abdul Atti that the civil disobedience is not working and is not going to work is simply a wishful thinking. It's working. The army has been freaking out and have been calling on people with loudspeakers to come and resume life as usual, and people just are disobeying. It is working. It's not 100% working, and no civil disobedience in history was 100%, but it's working enough to make the army concerned enough to not want to reopen the internet. All of this organizing happened without internet, and that is really impressive. All this organizing happened using text message and calls, which I expect the military will try to crack down on next. Right. And all the attempts to make it fail have failed so far. Okay. So Mr. Abdul Atti is merely making wishes here, and I'm not really surprised.
Big picture, Rabie Abdul Atti, do you support the rights of the protesters?
Yes, actually, he is trying to interpret this, what I said negatively also. Actually, I am seeking for stability in our country, and I think that the situation is not actually the situation which we require, because now definitely this civil disobedience will affect the services, but I think that the only solution for the stability in our country and for reconciliation between different political factions is to come to the table of negotiation and to forget about all grievances. And this is actually the only solution for the coming period, which we will call it the interim period. And if we will not go according to this actually strategy, our country will follow the same situation that which we will not require
Rabie,
that situation. Which
I don't like to interrupt because there's and I apologize for interrupting. I don't like to interrupt because there's a 4-second delay between us, right? So this is possibly going to be a little bit choppy and annoying to our viewers as well because of the audio delay. But I need to ask, you're saying the protesters need to put aside all grievances, but when more than 100 have been killed and their bodies have been chucked into the Nile and dozens of them have been raped by paramilitary forces, can you honestly say those people need to say, yes, I have no grievances with the Transitional Military Council or the Janjaweed. I'm totally open to just have talks with no preconditions?
Actually, I don't have the I don't have the information about those people who are dropped in the River Nile and those people who killed. Actually, this is actually I don't accept. I don't accept all these that result of removing those people who are sitting in front of the military command. But we are speaking now about the future, about the stability of our country, about the stable political system, and about reconciliation between different political parties. This is for the sake of Sudan people and for the sake of the future of the
I've asked you something very directly
generation.
that's been widely reported, and this is one of the main reasons that we are doing this segment right now. We're looking at the sit-in. We have the deportation of opposition leaders such as Yasser Arman to South Sudan. We've had people being killed. We've had credible reports of people's bodies being dumped into the Nile and credible reports from the hospitals of dozens of people being raped. I'm saying this is being done by the paramilitaries under the watch of the military, and you're telling the protesters, forget about all of that, let's just come to the table and have stability and reconciliation. Doesn't that sound as if you're from another planet? Okay, it seems as if we've lost the audio of Rabie because I'm terribly annoyed that I didn't get him to respond to that. Ahmed Maglad, just before we leave, final thoughts from you. And we're going to have all three of you back on the program again in the coming weeks and months because clearly the story is not going to go away anytime soon. But final thoughts from you, Ahmed.
We say in our own language, the last word and the first word is for the Sudanese people. Today we witness knowledge against ignorance. We witness peaceful protest and peaceful movement against military and militias rule. I believe with no doubt, looking into the history, that we will succeed. Now or in the near future, we will succeed.
Ahmed Maglad, Mohammed Abu Bakr and Rabie Abdul Atti Obeid, I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers.